We begin with the latest developments in the war between Russia and Ukraine. Russia is stepping up the evacuation of civilians as Ukrainian troops advance in their biggest cross-border offensive since the start of hostilities. Russian state media is reporting that more than 76,000 people have been moved to safety in the southwestern Kursk region, where Russian forces are fighting to hold back Ukrainian infantry and armored vehicles. With the incursion now into its sixth day, the local governor says 13 people have been injured after Ukrainian drones and missiles were shot down over the Kursk region. Russia's foreign ministry says the army will deliver a tough response to the Ukrainian attack. Let's get more with DW's Nick Connolly. He joins us now from Kyiv. Nick, it's good to have you with us. This is almost a week into this incursion. Is it any clearer what the Ukrainian presence on the ground is?
It is very, very difficult. It even feels like the longer this goes on, the less we actually understand. That has a few reasons. On the first kind of point to really stress here is that the Russians are cracking down on civilians, putting out social media kind of videos of destruction caused by Ukrainian forces, of burnt out military vehicles, that kind of thing. They are coming down very hard. There have been reports of arrests there amongst the civilian population, so we're getting less from those people. We're also hearing less and less kind of clear information from the Russian military bloggers. These are military journalists who are often pretty close to the Russian military, and initially they really had a sense that the Russian government wasn't taking this seriously enough, and so were really beating the drum and being very clear about the threat. Now they seem a bit more happy that the government is taking this seriously and have gone back to basically towing the government line. So we are reliant on stuff we find on Telegram, trying to geolocate pictures to make sure that these are really the locations that they are claimed to be. There is a sense that also the Ukrainians are trying to basically make it unclear where they are. They sometimes seemingly raid, quite some distance from the main area they can control and then pull back. So sometimes you'll have a map with kind of very disparate dots of where Ukrainian forces have been spotted. That doesn't necessarily mean they control all that territory. But it does seem, for the most part, to be about 15, 20 kilometers at most from the border. But, an area that is now several hundred square kilometers of Kursk region, presumably under Ukrainian control.
So no clear indications from military and even social media sources on what the military aims are. Has President Zelensky given any clearer indications on what his strategic aims are?
I think he has kept very tight-lipped, especially compared to last year, where you had that counteroffensive, that Ukrainian counteroffensive that was trailed for months and then basically failed to meet expectations and really came back to kind of bite the Ukrainian leadership. He's talked in very general terms about basically Russia having started this war and now bringing back, giving Russia a taste of its own medicine, showing Russian people what the cost of war is that Ukrainians have been paying now since 2022. So that sounds like basically trying to affect morale in Russia, trying to get the Russian population to ask more questions of its leadership. It's also pretty important here in Ukraine, after months of bad news, for Ukrainians to see that their army still has reserves, still has the capacity to take the Russian army by surprise and to kind of basically throw the playbook kind of out of the window and start something new that people weren't thinking about. But this is obviously a very risky strategy. We've had lots of talk of Ukraine's problems with resources. It's delays in getting Western weapons, so now committing what seemed to be thousands of Ukrainian troops rather than just 1,000 or so, as was initially thought, is obviously a big risk, not just going in for a raid, but staying for longer. But it seems like President Zelensky thinks it is worth taking that risk, and that basically carrying on the kind of grinding artillery war in the east of the country just doesn't pay off for Ukraine.
So does this mean this incursion in Kursk is already having an impact elsewhere on the front lines?
So that was obviously the other main hope of the Ukrainian incursion here, that it would force Russia to pull away troops from the front lines in Donetsk region, for instance, and give Ukrainian troops there a chance to take a breather and maybe regain some territory. It does now seem, according to open intelligence analysts, that Russia is bringing troops away from the front lines, albeit the less kind of heavily contested bits of the front lines. But for the most part, they are still relying on conscripts who are often pretty young, lacking training, and that is part of the reason why the Ukrainian army has been having such a comparatively easy time so far, because Russia seemingly isn't willing to risk its positions in Donetsk yet, because they don't see that this problem on their own territory is worth it for now.
DW's Nick Connolly in Kyiv. Thank you so much for your reporting.